My name is Ira Wolfnathson. Born into a Luciferian world, I was an occultist of many decades. I was taken to Bohemian Grove at age 3. Today, I am Roman Catholic. When it comes to the metaphysical realms, the truth is always found somewhere between these two things, and such is the topic of the harrowing of hell. In the Apostles' Creed, we say this of Christ: He was crucified, died, and buried. He descended into hell. On the third day, he rose again from the dead and ascended into heaven. Up until the 1400s, this was the belief of the confessing church across the entire world. Everyone understood that Jesus descended into hell literally for 3 days. But today, we don't like to think of Jesus in hell, or to think of hell at all. That's exactly what the devil wants. In Revelations 1, Jesus is quoted, "I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of death and Hades." This implies Jesus went to hell to get the keys. This implies that Jesus didn't have the keys. Someone else had them. You see, in the Garden of Eden, Lucifer, the Nakash, took the keys to the kingdom on earth, once given to Adam. He took them legally when he tricked Adam via Eve to eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil. For when Adam went against God's will in doing so, the entire world fell and death entered it. Death, as we know, is Lucifer, the devil, Satan. Satan is a title. It translates in Hebrew to prosecutor, litigator. The devil is a lawyer, and a very mendacious one at that. He knows all of God's laws, second only to God. And God does not violate nor break his own laws, but he can, but chooses not to. For if he did, the cosmological tapestry would unravel from just one strand. This is how death came into the world under God's watchful eye. Ephesians 4 says, "When he ascended on high, he led a host of captives, and he gave gifts to men." Jesus won a spiritual war. He had a host of fallen captive angels. Who were they? Those chained in the darkness of the pit? The Watchers? The 200 fallen who came down on Mount Hermon and went into the daughters of men and spawned the Nephilim? Those monstrous hybrids who still live on within our royal bloodlines. And we can assume Jesus spoke directly to the Watchers, telling them that they're not getting out. The disciplines of typology and hermeneutics tell us this, as Peter writes of Enoch. The Watchers, those who never sleep while chained in that dark pit, contact Enoch for favor from God to release them. Enoch goes to God, and God says, "Hell no." Yet Enoch is allowed to descend into the pit and tell them what God said, and then he leaves. He goes back to the living. The story Peter tells of Enoch foreshadows the story of Jesus. But in Jesus' case, he preaches to the Watchers, not the dead humans, who are also held nearby, and we can imagine how fabulously that went over. He tells the Watchers, "You're not getting out, but I am." And boom, Christ ascends into heaven with all the dead patriarchs and prophets, including Adam and Eve, right in front of death, Hades, and the Watchers. Jesus conquers death.
In 2022, the Russian Armed Forces' discovery of 46 U.S. DoD-sponsored biolabs in Ukraine emerged as one of the last pieces of the Luciferian puzzle on how to depopulate the world and enslave the survivors. Like the CIA's MK-Ultra program, which never shut down, the offshore U.S. bioterrorism program grew exponentially over the decades, fed by hundreds of billions of dollars in money laundering and black budget projects, while initially populated with Nazi scientists via Operation Paperclip. The convergence point of these threat vectors, combined with the ascendance of artificial intelligence and self-assembly nanotechnology, pose the greatest risk for the survival of the human species. That point now lies over the horizon, named the Black Harrowing. As a direct assault on Jesus Christ's descent into hell to rescue souls from damnation, the Luciferians mock and curse God through satanic inversion. Instead of saving souls, the Luciferians plan to destroy souls. To unleash that biblical apocalypse, they ran the COVID-19 pandemic as a test. They did so to see how the public reacted to mandates, how they obeyed the authorities' commands, and how those acquiesced, taking the bioweapon vaccines. Divining a plan of such evil and scale required mining a torrent of data from all segments of life, business, and society. An array of fractal AI nodes, sitting in government agencies and military bases servers around the world, worked in tandem with mainstream media pushing one named virus after another to gauge the people's response to fear. In a growing body of skeptics, immunizations no longer carry the mantle of savior, but disdain. If the Great Reset was to build the bridge to transhumanism, the Black Harrowing aimed to fulfill the final solution of mankind. The Black Awakening would herald the slaughter. The Black Harrowing, the genocide kill shot. The former offered a brute force vision of Heinrich Himmler's army of Nazi super soldiers. The latter inferred a depth of evil and darkness that only Dr. Mengele could envision and help devise. One of the Achilles' heels of the Luciferians, however, is the revelation of method. Sometimes it's leaving clues at a crime scene in plain sight. Other times it's a way to circumvent the universal law of free will, or in this case, informed consent. The elites did that through predictive programming, silently showing the public what would come, leaving them powerless to stop it. That was the case in the 1992 and 2012 Summer Olympics opening ceremonies, in which they created pandemic pantomimes to stealthily warn the global village. Beyond pagan idolatry and demonic symbolism, the Luciferians are also bound to their occult mysticism, and therefore must perform acts and rituals of sacrifice. One evening, after the 9/11's Twin Towers were cleared from Ground Zero, a procession of hooded druids marched around the site before construction began on the new One World Trade Center. They appeared to do it to curse the hallowed ground. Part of monarch programming is the ritual of induction. The most effective way to split a personality is to induce a traumatic experience in subjects. Other ways to induce mind control is to transition subjects through drugs with a seat in the chair. For the looming Black Harrowing to succeed, deception and technology represent the force multiplier. Yes, a virus in this case, a bacteria, will ignite the global panic, unleashing a real pandemic that could eliminate 1/3 of the world's population per the Book of Revelation. You see, mind control will be used as a spearhead in the liquidation process, but it will be technology and fear that spreads it. Soon, the Black Harrowing will launch an outbreak of a meningeal variant. That is a meningitis-type bacteria that will spread rapidly through cities and communities. When bodies start to litter the streets, the terror will scare and shock the masses to testing sites and clinics. In droves, they will rush not to be vaccinated, but to have their brains and spines scanned to see if they are infected with a silent killer. What will the scanning technology be? V2K or voice-to-skull programming, an implant transmitter and receiver, acoustic, light, or infrasound waves? What about the self-assembly nanotech in graphene oxide? Will it also play a role? Whatever the malicious device, the real deception will come 2 to 3 weeks later when the scanned people die from a euthanasia shot or neurostrike. From there, the meningeal variant will be blamed for every man, woman, and child who dies. That stark moment will signal the start of eliminating millions of human beings. For the plan to work, the Luciferians need to deploy a scanning technology that can increase the rate of induction to move swiftly to reach critical mass. Some of the victims might be lured to wearing visor technology, fitted either with infrasound or optogenetics, or pulsed by low-frequency EMF transmission. The solution will be sold as the cure, when it will be the cull, the kill shot. As the transition happens to people who receive the diagnostic tests, the scanner will neural map their brains with scalp EEG, computing a band power for that signal. In other words, the rate of dying while remotely being switched off. The Black Harrowing represents the second pillar in the Luciferians' unholy trinity of destroying God's seed and children. Black AI, the third pillar, denotes an even greater threat to the genocide of humanity.
We're dealing with, as you pointed out one time, a 5,000-year-old Sumerian death cult. They've been doing this for a very long time. This is just, again, this is a 20th century iteration. And what happened is, in 1991, we passed in the middle of the night the Nunn-Lugar Act. And the Nunn-Lugar Act, named for Senators Nunn and Lugar, was under the guise of defense threat reduction. Okay, it was the Soviet Union was falling apart. They